Hi everyone, we're just going to give it another minute for the other participants to join and then we'll start. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imelda Haran and I'm from the Open University. I would like to welcome you all to the Open University session on understanding job application forms. As the leading provider of online learning, we are absolutely delighted to be involved in this virtual festival. In this session, my colleague Sean Gallagher will look at some tips on how to write a winning application. Over to you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Imelda, and thank you everybody for attending. So today in this, it's a brief session, it's about 20 minutes or so, but hopefully we will have a look at application forms and how to go about creating a one-in-one. We'll first of all look at some of the different types of forms and the different questions that you could be asked, and then hopefully we'll be able to articulate and communicate your own knowledge and skills and experiences within your application. And then finally at the end, we'll do like a little review of the top tips on writing a winning application form. See if we can move this on. So application forms, unfortunately, it is a way of, I suppose, the job seeking process that you're going to have to either fill in an application form at some stage or send in a CV. So today we're going to be looking at the application form process. Employers prefer application forms because they actually are setting the agenda. They're asking the question. So everybody will have to answer the same question, and then it's easier for them, I suppose, to judge how you meet the requirements for the job in question. CVs, you tend to put down what you want to put down on your own CV, put in your own information, but the application form, you have to answer the questions that are asked. The purpose of the application form is really only to get you to the interview stage. It's very unlikely that you'll ever be offered a job from just an application or a CV. So it's just one of the key steps in the whole recruitment process, and it is really just to get to the interview. So your aim when you're completing your application form is to convince the employer that you're worth interviewing. Employers often receive a lot of applications, and in general, they can take less than 2 minutes to decide whether to continue reading yours or not. So it's really important and it's crucial that you are selling yourself to your best ability and making sure that you're not putting in that no pile right away. And the main rules they follow in an application, it's not rocket science, it's to look at what the instructions are. Make sure you follow the instructions, present the information neatly and clearly, and sell your most relevant skills and experiences and match them to the job in question. So I think 5 takeaways from today too would be, we'll have a wee look at avoiding some common mistakes that people make in the application form, have an idea about doing your preparation before you put pen to paper or indeed start typing. Have a look at some of the examples of using the STAR technique. If you haven't come across STAR, I'll talk about that in the next slide or so. And then we'll just have a look at using some of the more positive words in your application and being less passive. So using action verbs, etc., to make sure that you're selling your own experiences and your own skills to the best of your ability. Most application forms now will have pretty much a similar set of sections that for you to fill in, and they follow the format of personal details, obviously putting in your name, your contact details, your address, etc. If they'd ask for an email address, I would always advise applicants to make sure you have a sensible sounding email address. If you have a jokey sounding email, I would say change it, get a new one, and keep it specifically for jobs or for your recruitment process. Next sections on application forms would be the employment history. And this usually takes the format of your most recent or your current job comes first, and then you work backwards in time. And that's similar to for your education and qualifications. So it's your most recent qualification first and you work backwards. So if you were studying with the Open University, that come first, and then you would move back in the different levels of your secondary school or all our professional training courses, etc. attended. And one of the key areas of the application form is the blank space that they usually ask, where they ask you to, show how you're suitable for this position, or, provide additional information. And that is really key that you fill in that space. It's not optional. So when you see a blank space saying, would you like to add more information in support of your application, make sure you do fill it in. And you would fill it in by addressing the criteria, look at the job, look at the duties, look at the key skills in the job criteria, and make sure you match the two of them. As the closer you match, the more chance of success in the application process. And then the final section is usually references. If you are given your references, make sure you've asked permission beforehand. If you're going to be applying for a lot of jobs in the coming weeks or months, it's a good idea to contact your referees. Just say to them that you're going to be dropping applications to various employers, and just to make sure that they're still okay with being included as your reference or your referee, and maybe even give them a wee update on what you've been doing, so they're more able to speak about your suitability for the role. So thinking like a recruiter, I don't know, does anybody want to type into the type box why you think an application would go straight onto the no pile? To see if there is anybody willing to speak up or type in. Give them a second or so. I know everybody can be shy on these online. Oops.
Lacking details, Sean?
Yeah, lacking details. So what we have done is we have been talking to employers and recruiters over the last few years. The Open University has many links with local employers, national employers and international employers. And when we in careers are talking with our employers and recruiters, we ask them, why are students or why are candidates been turned down? And so this is some of the examples of what they have told us in our the different types of mistakes and why people be put straight onto the no pile. I think number one, they said, was poor spelling or grammar. It's really important that you make sure that your application doesn't contain any spelling mistakes or bad grammar. And that's a key element to the application process. And what I would say there is, don't just rely on spell checker, because spell checker, the word could be spelt right, but it mightn't necessarily make sense. And just off the top of my head, the different types of where, W-H-E-R-E and W-E-R-E, etc., W-E-A-R, they would be all spelt right by spell checker, but they wouldn't make sense. So don't just rely on spell checker when you're doing your overview of the application. Not following instructions should be simple, not completing correctly or not completing all the boxes. If it asks to be filled in, if it's a paper and pen one, if it asks for a black pen, make sure you use a black pen. If it asks for block capitals, make sure you use block capitals. If it's an online application, There could be word counts or even character counts. So making sure that you do follow the rules and follow the instructions. It's really important that you do that. And I would always say complete all the boxes. Even if something isn't necessarily relevant, just put an NA, non-applicable, into the box. But always fill in the additional information box where it's your chance to sell yourself and sell the skills and experiences you have and show how you are the ideal candidate for that job in question. Obvious cut and pastes. So this is one of the things that employers don't like. They think you're applying to them and you haven't taken the time to read the criteria, to understand the company, and to look at the different roles and duties and skills that they're looking for, that you've got a standard answer that you just cut and paste. So you could be applying for a job with a fast food firm, or you could be applying for like a graduate role and you're just putting in the same cut and paste answer. So that can become quite obvious to employers that you haven't actually tailored it to the job that you're applying for. Again, not being concise, finding it hard to get to the point. Usually with application forms, both online and paper, there will be a word count. If it's a paper application form, there'll be a space where you write it in. And I would always say, you know, practice before you actually do it. Take a photocopy of the paper application and write it out rough first. The last thing you want to do is, if it's a paper application, is start writing and then have to get your actual writing getting smaller and smaller to fit into the box. So before you start, you know, take a photocopy and use that to make sure that you can fit everything in that you want. And if it's an online, which more and more application forms nowadays are online, make sure that that you're following the word count before you start to, you know, think about, can you save it and can you come back to it at different dates, or does it have to be completed all on the one go? Again, not focused on the needs of the employer. So people are unsuccessful because they're not matching their own skills and their own interests to what the employer is looking for or what the job criteria says. And in general, because employers get so many applications through, they say around between 90 seconds, 2 minutes, you know, it also takes for them to make a first impression. And you want to make sure that you're not being put on that no pile, that you're going to be put to the side for possible to be called for interview. I would say before you even put your pen to paper, do some research. Have an understanding about who the employer is, what kind of sector they're involved in, what does the role involve, what are the key skills in the role, and then think about your own experiences and your own work experience or hobbies or activities or pastimes or voluntary work, and how can you make them fit the criteria. And then when you've thought about that, how are you going to present this and how are you going to get it across to the employer that you're worth interviewing, that you have the skills. Don't know if you can see that, but that's just a wee short example of a personal spec, where down one side it's giving you sort of like the list of requirements or the key skills that an employer could be asking for in the jobs criteria, and then down the other side we've given some evidence of how you know could fill it up. So just looking at one there, so the numeracy one. So a key skill that the employer is looking for is somebody with numeracy, and then you can give examples like treasurer of a residents association, you've drawn up the budget, or you've been responsible for accessing potential expenditure, you know. So it's how you match your evidence to the actual skill sets. It's really important in the application process. And often people think they might have done a part-time job or they might have a voluntary experience and they don't think it's relevant because it's not the same job, but the skill sets can be very much relevant and can be transferable. So no matter what job it is, teamwork, communication, you know, interpersonal skills, those are all highly transferable and highly desirable skills. And you can use any of your examples from sport, from voluntary work, from part-time jobs to demonstrate that you have the skills needed to be shortlisted and called for interview. the STAR technique. I don't know if you've come across this, but we would always recommend to frame your answers both at the application form and also at an interview using the STAR technique. And STAR just stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you're writing your answer, think about what was the situation, what was the tasks and the actions that you had to do to achieve or deal with that situation, and the R is the result. So here's a brief example of a question on an application form. And the question says, think of occasion when you were involved in a difficult confrontational situation with friends, families, or colleagues, or members of the public. And when you see a question like that, it's quite scary and it's quite a difficult looking question. Best way to deal with that and the best way to answer it is to try and frame an answer using the STAR technique. So we're saying, first of all, think of the situation. So you describe what was the situation, why was it difficult to handle, and you think of the tasks and the actions then that you undertook to deal with that situation, and the result, how did it end up? So for that little example there that I'm showing you, somebody was working as a receptionist in a leisure centre. They had to deal with a member of the public who wasn't happy about one of the rules. The rule didn't allow children under 10 to swim without an adult. The person wanted to leave their 7-year-old son there while she went shopping. She became angry, and because the receptionist, they didn't want to sell a swimming ticket to her son. So that was the situation, and that was the task, and the actions were, what did you do? How did you address the situation? And then the result, what was the outcome? So the action and the result, I clearly explained the rules regarding children under 10 required adult supervision. I explained that this rule was there to ensure children's safety, as the centre didn't have all the facilities to look after young children swimming without an adult. I suggested she could leave her son in the area that was play area that was supervised, and she could go swimming with her son once she returned. The woman calmed down and agreed to leave her son in the play area. So again, just to reiterate there, it's describing the situation and then the tasks and the actions that you carried out to achieve it, and then a result. If you frame your answers to questions on the application form using that STAR technique, it makes it much easier for you to be able to formulate and outline exactly what it is, the skills that you have regarding, in this one, it was dealing with confrontation, or you could be problem solving or using your initiative, etc. When we do talk to employers, some of the key areas, key skills that they're looking for are resilience, somebody with problem solving ability, people that are flexible, and people have a wee bit of commercial awareness, a wee bit of know-how about how businesses work. And as you can see, those types of skills you don't have to be studying the degree, or you don't have to be on any particular course. They're transferable skills, and everybody will have those skills, and you'll have gained them from just your general part-time job, hobbies, life, living, family, anything. You can use anything to demonstrate that you have flexibility or resilience, or you're able to solve problems. And it's really key then that you do that you make sure that you can match up the skills employers are looking for and what you have. I was going to go into this, but I know we don't have an awful lot of time, but this was a wee exercise I was going to do, but the ones with the wee green ticks are the kind of action verbs that you should be using when you're talking about the skills and the abilities that you have. So you want to be saying stuff like, I delivered, and I exceeded, I achieved, I instigated, I led. And you want to leave out things that were more passive in the role. So like, I was asked to, or I was involved in, or I was told to, so think about being more positive and more proactive, and use active verbs when you're describing the skills and duties and experiences that you have gained over your work and your studies. Just to summarize, top tips. I know it was 20 minutes, it was very quick, and we didn't go into any great detail, but really do take time analyzing the job information. If you see a job that you're interested in, look at the criteria, look at the personal spec. I would highlight or underline the key skills. So jobs will say stuff like, no, must be an excellent team player, must have excellent communication skills. If they're saying that, highlight team skills and communication and make sure you put that into your application form. So it's all about matching yourself to the job requirements. It's all about making sure the skills that they're looking for are the skills that you're reflecting back. And the closer you can articulate your skills and experiences to meet the personal spec, the more success you will have and the greater chance of being called to an interview. So you might have all the skills and experiences. You could be the ideal candidate, but unless you can articulate that, get it down in writing, and then again at interview, you're not going to be as successful as you could be. But also say be a star. When you're thinking about your examples, back them up with the skills. Think about the situation. So what was it? What was the situation? What were the tasks and the actions? And what was the result? If you frame your answers like that, it's a really, really good way of presenting the skills and experiences to employers. Always check for correct spelling and grammar. As I said, don't just rely on spell checker. Once you have drafted it, read it again, get somebody else to read it. The more eyes looking at it, the better. They'll pick up mistakes. And I would also say keep a copy of your application so that you can review it when what you've written when you're going to call for an interview. And also it does, I know I said earlier not to be copying and paste, but it's nice to have all the different applications in a folder in your computer or whatever, where you can look back at them, and you can, if you're applying for the same type of job over and over again, you can start seeing, yeah, this is the type of questions that I'm being asked, and here's good examples to give them, and frame it round like that. I think that is us in time-wise. Is there any questions? You can either, feel free to turn on your mics and ask a question, or you could pop one into the chat box.
Hi, Sean, that was really good. This is Michelle from Learning Cities.
Hi, Michelle.
That was excellent, I have to say.
Thank you.
And sometimes you always get this out of anybody else that's on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's while hard to get away from the we.
Yes.
So, just say I, but it's not technically that accurate, because it would take. What would your advice be there?
Yeah, no, I would always, it's you're selling yourself, so make sure that you are, you say I was involved or I led or I rather than we. I would agree with you, Michelle, make sure that you are putting yourself front and center. Sometimes it's hard, I think, for Northern Irish people to big themselves up and put themselves out there, but that's really what you're doing. It's a marketing situation. You're selling yourself, and you have to be proactive about it, and you have to be a bit more upfront. And it might go against your natural instincts, they say, to big yourself up, but that's really what you're there to do.
Yeah, I just think it's really important as well that when you're doing that, when you're going for an application, that you really do think about and prepare.
Definitely preparation.
Things about preparation as well is really important.
Yeah, because it's like when you consider it, it's nearly like an exam, isn't it? So you wouldn't just start doing an exam without having done your revision and preparation beforehand.
Except you don't get a qualification at the end.
You don't get Well, hopefully you'll get an interview and then a job.
And then a job. Can I just ask before I go? I don't want, in case anybody else wants to ask a question. Are you doing something, because I think it's really important, this was really good, but the interview process, I take it you do something on that online in Open University as well, Sean?
We do, and if you were a member or if you were a student, then you would have access to, we would do a lot of work on applications, CVs, interviews. We would have software where you can do like a mock interview, using software.
Oh, excellent.
But it is only for Open University students, so you have to be an actual registered student to be able to access it.
But it's a good service to provide.
It's a great service, and we would have a lot of like virtual learning fairs, and we had like events like this where we would do, mock assessment centers or different things like that, where students can come and participate in a safe environment and make mistakes and ask questions and do things like that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Just if anybody else likes to ask a question, because I know we're finishing up very shortly. But Sean, that was really, I thought that was really, really good. I thought it was very interesting indeed, and nice and clear and concise to the point.
Thank you. Any other questions? Stop sharing there now.
Sean, there's nothing in the chat box or the question and answer. I think you covered everything very concisely within that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, folks, that's all then. I take it.
Well, we say cheerio to you.
Yeah,
And thank you very much, Sean. And thanks, Imelda. And thanks to the Open University. We really appreciate you being
not
part.
at all. It was great to be involved.
Okay.
Thank you,
Adam.
Michelle.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.